the goal of this video is to show you guys some of the sustainability efforts at other institutions that inspired the Purdue Green Lab Initiative, and also to show you things that individuals as undergraduates or graduates have done to spark or help strengthen and bolster these programs at their own institutions. Thus, it can maybe serve as a source of inspiration to some of you. Harvard University has a sustainability website that was pretty useful for us because they have a lot of case studies, and you could check that out. Everything that I'm talking about, I'll post links to it at the end of this little Harvard segment, by the way. So I'm going to go through two different case studies that were particularly interesting, and they both involve energy use. Quentin Gilly, at the time of his study, was a medical school student, a master's student, and he wanted to determine how much energy and money could be saved in a lab by employing basic energy conservation practices. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's pretty much like what it seems like. Just basic things. And so he metered equipment in like benchtop equipment before employing these techniques and then after. And the whole experiment lasted 3 weeks. For more information about these methods, once again, I'll post a link. But what you're looking at on the screen right now is his kind of before measurements. So on the bottom you've got the equipment. On the y-axis is the wattage per day, so the electricity consumption based on the lab equipment per day. And you can see that some things use a lot more than others, right? So it's kind of important to know which things are the really most energy intensive in your lab. But anyway, the final week after they got the baseline, this graph you're looking at now, they started putting signs on the equipment talking about the study and saying that the energy was being monitored. The lab manager started talking to members and asking them for their full participation. And also, the only other thing that they did was the lab manager would check the equipment at the end of the day to make sure it was all off every day that week. So the results are pretty cool. The thermal cycler, like the things that use a lot of electricity, were reduced by up to 70%, which is awesome. The average reduction in electricity use was 50% for all the different things. So their conclusion was that you can make a difference, but the hard part is motivating members to actually take part, as you can tell by the quote on this slide. So the next case study I'm going to tell you guys about from Harvard, it was called the Turn Out the Lights competition. And this started with a building manager, actually, at Harvard named Mike Paterno. He was walking through his building, and it was like a holiday or late at night, and so a lot of people weren't there. But he noticed that there were numerous labs with their lights on, even though there were no students in the lab. So his solution was to bring a competition to the 4 largest labs in his building, the chemistry and chemical biology building. Initially, to make the competition fair, all labs created a baseline percentage of the time their lights were on so that the competition could be measured by how far they improved from this baseline, each individual lab. One lab was up to 97% of the time their lights were on for that initial week. Lab users were informed about this baseline percentage so they knew where they were starting. They also each week were updated about how the other labs were doing, and they were all competing for a catered breakfast. That's it. And it lasted 3 weeks. They saw massive improvements. Average was 35.3% for all the labs, which is really good, but the winner was 54.2% improvement from their baseline. So if all the labs would keep this up for a whole year, they would have saved $7,000, which is pretty significant. You can see from this quote that to some of the students it was the competition that sparked the collective effort for them to all come together and actually participate in sustainability. It was the idea of beating the other labs.
Another example of a sustainability program implemented at university laboratories is at Cornell University. It's a program called Green Your Lab. This is an initiative that is a certification program in which you would apply to be a part of and fill out what sustainability practices you already implement in your lab, and they would come out and visit your lab and fill out an information sheet to place you into one of 4 levels. These levels are based on the point assignments for your lab, with 4 being the highest level and 1 is the lowest. And then they provide you with information on how to reduce your impact by lab energy conservation, green chemistry practices, solid waste management, purchasing, and community engagement. And more information on this project and their sustainability tips are available at Cornell's website, which a link will be provided with this video. This Green Lab initiative was implemented by the Graduate and Professional Student Assembly at Cornell when they created a sustainability committee at the end of last year. They believe that since a large portion of Cornell's carbon footprint is from their labs, and the labs do not take up a large portion of their campus, it is important to get the grad students in those labs on board to reduce the campus's overall carbon footprint. So their belief is based on the fact that the impact that they have together is much better than the impact that they can have alone. So they are working together as graduate students to try and create a more sustainable environment in their labs.
In UC Davis, it was found that research labs can use 4 to 5 times more energy than a similar-sized classroom or office and accounts for as much as 2/3 of the university's energy consumption. The biggest consumption of energy are mainly the fume hoods and ultra-low temperature freezers, which each consuming more energy than a house. 90% of labs are empty for 12 hours of the day, yet will still run as if fully occupied. 50% energy savings can be achieved just with proper lighting, with daylight controls and reduced air stop discharge air speeds. Lab participants taking in the program commit to spend 4 hours per month on a green lab. They are required to watch a series of videos and fill out a green laboratory assessment frequently to track their progress. It is recommended that participants take part in the program for 3 to 4 months. Labs will be awarded with bronze, silver, or gold certification at the end of the period. Labs consume the most energy out of any other facilities on a university campus. The UC system has committed to goals of zero waste by 2020 and carbon neutrality by 2025. With 3,000 labs just in UC Davis alone, lab operators play a big role in contributing to this goal. Many universities around the world have opted in to adopt UC Davis Green Your Lab initiative, and they have since created an easy-to-implement system for any universities interested to bring it to their universities. The main purpose of the program is to change the mindset of the lab operators and hopefully influence other labs to follow suit, because only with all the labs taking part in this green initiative can the UC system achieve its goal of zero waste and carbon neutrality.
So the next school that we studied was the University of Washington, and they have a very extensive sustainability plan for their entire campus, not just for their labs. And this includes the Climate Action Plan, which is aimed at reducing CO2 emissions, waste streams, energy usage, water usage, and so on. And it's probably one of the most extensive plans that we had seen in any university. So included in these plans is a Green Lab certification process. Now this is similar to many other universities, such as Cornell's and Harvard's that we just discussed, but they have very explicit guidelines and procedures and how this is set up, and it's been working well for years, so this is a really good case study and seeing how that whole process is done well. So another great resource for University of Washington is their sustainable lab practices. Now they have a vast database for various lab techniques, which include in the areas of energy, water, and waste, which I'll discuss a little bit in the next slide. So some reduction techniques that can be directly implemented in Purdue labs with regards to energy. Fume hoods. Now fume hoods are one of the biggest energy users in labs at universities. One fume hood can use about as much energy as a single family house. So it's pretty important to reduce their energy usage from their HVAC systems. So in order to combat energy usage in fume hoods. There's these campaigns around. Now, this one's specifically from Purdue, but at University of Washington has a really well set up system of this. But you just shut the sashes, and this is a sticker that you put on the side to tell lab users to just shut the sash, and it can save up to like 30% amount of energy usage in labs. So there also is freezer defrosting and device shutdown procedures, and these are just techniques that University of Washington has suggested and that have worked really well in the past. So also with regards to waste, these are pretty straightforward and simple, but they've had some sort of good impact at University of Washington specifically. So reducing unwanted mail, electronic versions of catalogs, and we're using mailing and packaging materials. And moreover, water usage. One of the biggest contributors of reducing water usage is at the source. So on the right, there's these things called water misers, and it's just a simple screw-on system for any sink, and it uses about 50% less water, but has the same efficiency as regular sinks. And also, they have suggested run autoclaves only when full, but that's pretty self-explanatory. And so, if you want more of these techniques, there are links at the end of this video and that you can follow, and they will show you all the sustainable lab techniques in a very short, straightforward way.
So here are the links that were mentioned earlier. The first and the third are both links to the Harvard's case study website. The first one's for the lab equipment reduction in electricity, and then the third one is for the Turn Out the Lights competition. The second one is the actual PDF, his little report, where I got the graph from and everything for the first case study.